They say The Godfather is the most perfect movie ever made, but perfection has a price. Behind the iconic acts and cinematography is a film laced with strange symbols, real-world threats, and jaw-dropping accidents. We are about to take you through 20 weird facts you never knew about the world's most untouchable film. Number 20. James Caan took 147 blasts for one scene. They needed Sonny Corleone's death to feel brutal, like the streets were reclaiming him. So they didn't just fake it. James Caan let himself get shot 147 times by squibs. Squibs are tiny explosive charges worn under clothing. And that day, Caan wore more than any actor ever had. They exploded in sequence, ripping his shirt, launching blood packs, blasting buttons off midair. The pain? Real. The fear? Unforgettable. Caan later admitted, "They were mean little fuckers. When they went off, it felt like I was getting punched all over my body." The entire $100,000 scene, cars, toll booth, and squib storm was captured in one violent, perfect take. Caan lay twitching, breathless, shredded, and the world, it believed Sonny really died that day. Number 19. The Godfather's look was born from a mistake. You know that rich, moody shadow that wraps around The Godfather like a silk veil of menace? That iconic dim-lit aesthetic everyone now worships as cinematic genius. It started as a mistake. Cinematographer Gordon Willis, later nicknamed the Prince of Darkness, was experimenting with underexposure during the first shoot in Don Corleone's office. When the footage came back, Paramount panicked. Executives thought it was a disaster. Too dark, too murky, like the actors were hiding from the camera. But Coppola saw it differently. He leaned in and said, "No, this is exactly what the mafia is. Hidden, dangerous, watching you from the shadows." From that moment, darkness became the language of the film. And today, that accident defines the visual DNA of every gangster movie that came after it. Number 18. The horsehead was real, and so was the scream. You remember the scream? Everyone does. Jack Woltz slowly pulls back the covers. Then suddenly, a decapitated horse's head stares back at him. He lets out a soul-shattering howl that's burned into film history. Here's what most people don't know. That was a real horse's head, and that scream was real too. Director Francis Ford Coppola could have used a prop, but he didn't want fake reactions. So the crew sourced an actual horse's head from a dog food factory, delivered it to set on ice, and placed it in the bed without telling the actor. When John Marley pulled back that sheet, he wasn't acting. That gagging, guttural scream, that was pure, unfiltered horror, because he thought the mob was playing for keeps. It was legal, barely, but ethical? Forget it. In a movie full of fakes, this moment was disturbingly authentic. But The Godfather didn't stop at traumatizing actors. Next, it gambled everything on a scene that was never supposed to work and turned it into cinema history. Number 17. Michael's first kill was never supposed to work. Michael Corleone didn't murder in a back alley. He did it over dinner. This is the famous restaurant hit. Michael sits down with Sollozzo and a corrupt cop, excuses himself to the restroom, and comes back with a gun. But here's the twist. This scene was never supposed to work. Al Pacino was still an unknown. The studio didn't trust him, and his performance was so cold and internal, they thought it was boring. But that was the genius. The entire scene simmers in silence. No one says what they mean, and death is served like dessert. Right before he pulls the trigger, Michael hesitates. Just a few seconds, shaking, breathing. It's the last time we ever see him unsure of anything again. Then boom, 2 shots, 1 dead cop, 1 dead gangster, and 1 babyface soldier who just became a warlord. Number 16. Brando stuffed his mouth with trash to sound like a Don. That voice, it didn't sound human. It sounded like God with a sore throat. Half whisper, half growl. Full nightmare.
Why did you go to the police? Why didn't you come to me first?
But that iconic Don Corleone voice didn't come from Brando's chest. It came from his cheeks because he literally stuffed his mouth with cotton balls and orange peels to make himself sound older, heavier, and more menacing. He wanted Don Vito to sound like a bulldog who'd swallowed a cigar. So for the audition, Brando crammed tissues into his mouth and scared the studio into hiring him. Later, for the real shoot, Brando had a custom dental plate made by a real dentist, turning his mouth into a prosthetic pressure chamber. Every time he spoke, it distorted the sound, just enough to make his words feel biblical. And it worked. That muffled mumble became the most imitated voice in cinema history. Not bad for a man chewing garbage. Number 15. The actor who refused to be the Godfather vanished. Marlon Brando made Don Corleone immortal, but he wasn't the studio's first choice. That honor went to Ernest Borgnine, a respected actor with real presence and gravitas. Paramount begged him to take the role. It was a once-in-a-lifetime offer. He turned it down. He thought the script glorified criminals. He didn't get the tone. He thought the role was beneath him. So the studio moved on. They offered Brando, who had to audition with cotton balls in his mouth, just to prove he could embody the role. The rest is cinematic history. Meanwhile, Borgnine's career, it never recovered. No major roles, no critical acclaim. He said in interviews years later that he regretted it for the rest of his life. One role, one decision, one missed chance to become a legend. Brando, meanwhile, got an Oscar and didn't even show up to accept it. And just when you thought turning down Don Corleone was the biggest mistake in Hollywood, wait till you hear what the real mafia did when they caught wind of the script. It's fact number 14, and it reeks of threats, fear, and something far more dangerous than fiction. Number 14. The mob tried to shut it down, then starred in it. When word got out that Hollywood was making a movie about the mafia, the real mafia was not amused. One of the loudest voices against The Godfather was Joe Colombo, boss of the actual Colombo crime family. He called it offensive, dangerous, and promised to shut it down. So he organized protests, sent threats, and even got the script rewritten to remove the word mafia entirely. Not once in the whole movie does anyone say mafia. That was his doing. But here's the knife in the guts. Colombo's rage turned to obsession. Soon, he wasn't just attacking the film. He wanted in. He offered protection, money, then finally, a role. That's how real mobsters ended up playing extras in the wedding scene, standing in for fictional gangsters while hiding real weapons under their tuxedos. The line between acting and organized crime, gone. Number 13. De Niro learned a dead dialect to become Don Vito. Robert De Niro didn't just play young Vito Corleone. He resurrected him to nail the role. De Niro learned to speak fluent Sicilian, not just Italian, but a specific dialect that's barely even spoken today. He spent 3 months with a coach, practicing every line, every vowel, and spoke over 90% of his dialogue in Sicilian. The commitment was psychotic. He barely blinked. He studied Brando's mannerisms frame by frame. He even learned how to move his jaw the way Brando did, with that sluggish bulldog drag. And the payoff? He won an Oscar for speaking a language most of the Academy didn't understand. That's how convincing he was. In a film filled with powerhouse performances, De Niro said the least, but indeed cast the longest shadow. Number 12. The real Don of the film wasn't Brando. Marlon Brando was cast as the Don, but on set, he wasn't always in control. That role, it quietly belonged to Richard Castellano, the man who played Clemenza. Because while Brando was rewriting lines in the dark, Castellano was laying down real-world demands. He refused to say certain words unless they were authentic. He even brought his uncle, an actual mobster, to set as a dialect coach. No one argued, not even Coppola, not even Brando. Castellano's mafia connections were respected or feared. That iconic line, it was improvised by Castellano, with permission from his consultant.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
So yes, Brando was no doubt a boss on screens, but behind the scenes, Clemenza called the shots. Number 11. The Sonny beatdown that broke real bones. It looks brutal. It was brutal. The street fight between Sonny and Carlo was meant to be choreographed. They rehearsed for a day and a half, but James Caan came in hot and never cooled down. He bit Gianni Russo's hand, kicked him in the ribs, and even hurled a metal garbage can lid right at him. Russo walked away with 2 broken ribs and a chipped elbow. His words, "Jimmy got a little aggressive. He hit me right in the head. Biting, throws me over the railing." The punches didn't always land, but the rage was real. Caan even lifted Russo off the ground with a kick. Russo called it the most dangerous moment of his acting life. Coppola, he refused to reshoot it, even when critics pointed out continuity errors. Coppola said the Oscars had already locked the negative, so they left it. Bones, bruises, bites and all. If that last fact left you lightheaded, good, because these are the buried truths behind blood oaths, broken bones, and scenes so real they left scars. If you're hooked on the power plays and the chaos behind the making of The Godfather, then aim and fire at that like and subscribe button, like you're Sonny charging down 116th Street with a trash can in your hands. Let's get back to it, because the next facts, they make cannoli look like a type of a pasta twirl. Number 10. The actor playing Luca Brasi was so scared of Brando. Luca Brasi was a killer, a tank, the guy who nailed someone's hand to a bar just for fun. So why is he standing in a corner, mumbling like a schoolboy? Because the actor Lenny Montana was so terrified of Marlon Brando in real life, he kept forgetting his lines. He stuttered, sweated, froze. And this real panic was so intense, Coppola wrote it into the script. That awkward interaction, that wasn't acting. That was Montana spiraling. They didn't plan for Brasi to be nervous, but Coppola saw the gold in it. He told Montana to just go with it, filmed the meltdown, and built it into the character's lore. That line delivery, shaky, broken, real, and it made the most feared enforcer in the film look terrified of the Don, which made the Don even scarier. Number 9, the scene that got reshot. Because of a zipper, The Godfather Part 2 was a time machine, and Francis Ford Coppola made damn sure it was airtight. Every lamplight, every spoon, every thread of fabric had to scream 1917. But then, a zipper ruined everything. During the flashback scenes of young Vito in Little Italy, several extras were filmed wearing modern zip-up trousers, something that didn't even exist back then. The scenes were immediately scrapped. Everyone had to come back and reshoot in button-fly pants, like proper turn-of-the-century immigrants. This wasn't just costume drama. It was Coppola's brutal standard for historical truth. He didn't care about cost, time, or convenience. If it wasn't accurate, it was out. Even a zipper could break the spell. That's why The Godfather Part 2 doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like memory. Number 8. The family dinner that wasn't in the script. They weren't just rehearsing scenes. They were rehearsing blood. Coppola had a wild idea. Before filming began, he threw real dinners with the entire Corleone cast. But here's the catch. They had to stay in character the entire time. Pacino barely spoke. Caan was loud and chaotic. Brando, watching like a lion in a zoo. And slowly, they became a family. These dinners got intense. People interrupted each other. Arguments flared. The actors started forming real sibling rivalries in character. So when the cameras rolled, that awkward tension and closeness you feel, that wasn't acting anymore. That was muscle memory. This is why the Corleones feel so real. They weren't just cast. They were cooked into a family, one dinner at a time. And just when you thought method dinners were intense, wait till you see what it took to film a baptism soaked in blood. It's fact number 7, and it took 4 days, 100 setups, and a soul-splitting montage that changed film forever. Number 7. The baptism scene was so complex, it took 4 days to shoot. It's one of the most iconic sequences in film history. Michael Corleone, Godfather in title and terror, swearing before God while his enemies are executed. But crafting that scene, it was a logistical nightmare. Francis Ford Coppola choreographed 91 camera setups across multiple cities. jumping between a serene church and 5 brutal murders, all synced to the priest's Latin blessings. The editing was revolutionary. No scene had ever used parallel cross-cutting like this, with prayer and violence woven so tightly it felt operatic. And it wasn't just art, it was pressure. Coppola had only days left on his shooting schedule. He risked everything to make this final sequence perfect. Critics called it the perfect movie ending. But behind the scenes, it was 4 days of chaos, sweat, and split-second precision. One wrong cut, and the whole illusion would have shattered. Number 6. Luca Brassi's death scene was so real. The actor almost passed out. Luca Brasi was supposed to be the Corleone's monster, a human tank, unkillable. But when it was his turn to die, the monster didn't roar. He suffocated, slowly, silently, terrifyingly. Because what you're watching on screen is nearly real. The actor Lenny Montana was a former mob enforcer and pro wrestler, but even he wasn't ready for that death scene. During the take, the garrote wire slipped and actually began cutting off his air. His panic? Real. The twitching? Real. That wide-eyed, silent desperation? 100% unscripted. Coppola, knowing he'd struck cinematic lightning, didn't yell, "Cut." He let it roll. The entire take, from handshake to gurgle, is what made it into the final film. Number 5. Sonny was so convincing, the FBI came after him. James Caan didn't just play Sonny Corleone, he became him. So much so that after The Godfather was released, the FBI added him to a wiretap list, believing he had real mob connections. Why? His slang, hand gestures, and raw energy were way too accurate, especially for someone who wasn't Italian. In fact, mobsters themselves assumed he was connected. It got so serious that FBI agents showed up at his house and questioned his friends and family. Caan had to explain repeatedly that he was just an actor. Real mobsters gave him respect. One told him, "You were more gangster than the gangsters." Number 4. Brando improvised a line that gave everyone chills. When Vito Corleone gathers the 5 families, he delivers a chilling moment that looked out of script. That subtle threat? Pure Brando. He improvised it on the spot, and the entire room froze. Even Coppola admitted it was so authentic, it felt like a real warning from a real mob boss. Some background actors in that scene were rumored to have mob connections, hired for authenticity. According to production legends, one of them quietly pulled Coppola aside afterward and said, "Tell Brando not to say stuff like that unless he means it." Brando brushed it off, but the vibe on set shifted. Nobody had to be told. He was the Don now. Number 3. The cat in the opening scene was a stray. That iconic cat wasn't in the script. It belonged to no actor, no trainer, and no department. Director Francis Ford Coppola literally saw the cat wandering the Paramount lot right before shooting, scooped it up, and placed it into Brando's hands without a word. The decision was spontaneous, but the effect was instantaneous. That soft purring nestled into the scene so organically that Brando simply went with it. The only downside? The cat purred so loudly that some of Brando's dialogue had to be re-recorded in post-production. What could have been a distracting mistake turned into one of cinema's most chilling visual metaphors. Here's where it gets good. Coppola's quick instinct transformed a stray kitty into a cinematic legend. Now, whenever anyone imagines Don Corleone, they picture that gentle stroking motion and what it hinted at beneath the surface. Number 2. Brando didn't memorize most of his lines and still gave the greatest performance ever. He was the Godfather, but Marlon Brando, he never memorized his lines. Instead, the crew had to hide cue cards everywhere, taped to lamps, stuck behind props, sometimes even pinned to the chests of other actors. It wasn't laziness. It was deliberate. Brando believed that memorization killed spontaneity. He didn't want to recite lines. He wanted to feel them. So he read them fresh, right there on set. And somehow it worked. Brando's delivery felt unscripted because it was. That halting, soft-spoken menace, born from the fact that he was processing the lines in real time. The director said it made the character unpredictable and unforgettable. No one had ever acted like that before. He wasn't reciting the words of Don Corleone. He was Don Corleone. Buckle up. Here's fact number 1, the most explosive truth behind The Godfather. Number 1, The Godfather's most brutal scene was based on a real-life mob execution. It's one of the most violent scenes in The Godfather. Carlo being garroted in a car, flailing like a caught animal, feet smashing the windshield in desperation. But here's the guttural twist. That kill was copied almost beat for beat from a real mob hit. In 1953, Albert Anastasia, a boss so feared they called him the Lord High Executioner, ordered a similar execution. The victim was strangled in a car, exactly like Carlo, while 2 killers held him down and smashed the windows to muffle his screams. Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo didn't just write a death scene, they recreated an actual mafia ritual. From the piano wire to the windshield kicks, it was all terrifyingly real. This wasn't stylized fiction. This was real blood history, quietly slipped into cinema. And the fact that millions cheered while watching it might be the scariest part of all. The Godfather didn't just redefine the gangster genre. It didn't just give us quotes to memorize like prayers. It reimagined power as something silent, sacred, and deadly. A director no one trusted, a studio begging for safer choices, a cast of rebels, legends, and real-life criminals. And yet somehow it became the most perfect film ever made. But behind every whispered threat and blood-soaked vendetta is a truth more shocking than fiction. Real mob ties, off-script violence, and moments that nearly burned the whole production to the ground. Francis Ford Coppola once said, "The Godfather is not about organized crime, it's about family." Now you've seen what that really means. Which movie should we travel the galaxy for next? Drop it in the comments. And remember, the most powerful man in the room is the one who never has to raise his voice or even show his face.
Wow, that was weird.